as we continue to put some verses together to show the oneness, the unity between Father and Son. And what we get to see in all of this is that Jesus reveals the Father. We've read that's how we even know the Father, is because Jesus came to reveal him, to show him, because no one has seen him. And yet Jesus reveals him. And in this revelation also is something deeper than he's just showing us the Father. It's the Father being with him. We're going to look at John 14, verses 9 through 11, and read something. And I know I've referenced this before, but let's just read it in here. And this is in response to a question that Philip asked him, or a request Philip made. Show us the Father, he said. And so in John 14:9, Jesus said to him, have I been with you so long, and yet you have not known me, Philip? Said you should see something, you should know something, you should know me already. I've been with you long enough. He who has seen me has seen the Father. So how can you say, show us the Father? And the way that Jesus says this to Philip in response to his request is like, Philip, you should already know this. Have I not been with you long enough that you realize that my Father and I, we were inseparable. You've seen me, you've seen him. And this is the beauty of the oneness that the Father and Jesus have. And even as he's on the earth walking as a man, yet he is still in that union with his Father. And he goes on, he says, do you not believe that I am in the Father and the Father in me? It's one in the other. It's a beautiful, beautiful oneness. He goes on, the words that I speak to you, I do not speak on my own, but the Father who dwells in me does the works. Believe me that I am in the Father, and the Father in me, or else believe me for the sake of the works themselves. It's just, he's telling Philip and the disciples with him, look, the Father and I are like this, we're together. What I see the Father do, what I hear the Father say, that's what I do, that's what I say. So Jesus' very words and his actions reveal the Father. He didn't just show up to, as we read in John 1:18, which we looked at a few sessions ago, that no one's ever seen the Father, but Jesus, the only begotten Son, has revealed him. He didn't just sort of bring out his PowerPoint presentation and his slides and his diagrams and say, okay, this is what the Father is like. He came with the Father in him, he and the Father in this union, and he reveals and exemplifies and demonstrates and manifests the very nature and the character of the Father. So when we hear Jesus speak, when we read his words, when we see what he does, we're hearing what the Father says, we're seeing what the Father does. It's a beautiful thing. And we could extend this because Jesus invites us to follow him. He says that if you will come after me, you deny yourself, which is everything in myself that's contrary to the very nature and likeness of God. I pick up my cross and I follow him. And picking up my cross means I'm going to take on the challenges and the hardships that lay in front of me, and I'm going to follow. And he invited us to follow him. So as I follow him and I look like him, and remember we looked at a verse, we looked in Romans 8, he tells us that he works all things together for good, but he is conforming us to the image of his Son. This is us looking like Jesus, which is also the idea is that we look like our Father, Jesus' Father, who Jesus said is our Father. And we could read on in John 14, and he talks about him dwelling in, Jesus talks about dwelling in the Father, and dwelling in us, and us in him as he is in the Father. It's a beautiful picture. So when we see Jesus, we see not just Jesus, we see the Father, we see God himself. It's a beautiful picture. And it also then points back to us because we dwell as the same fellowship, with the same oneness in him.